I had an entirely different intro planned out, but because I did not pre-record the video like I was originally planning on to, Kyrie Irving decided that he wanted out of Brooklyn this morning, per Sean's and Woj, of course. So he's probably going to be a future Laker, and I want to be making sure to talk more about that in the later part of this video. So stay tuned for that.
Three. He throws to the end zone. Davis 4-3 in the win. Oh, it's good. Crosby in on goal. Backhander. He scores. And good. 49ers win it.
Hello, everybody. How are we all doing today? Hope you're all having an amazing day. And before I really get into the NFC Championship recap, AFC Championship game, Super Bowl preview, NBA stuff, I want to let you know that I did upload on my other channel today. So if you like Halo, any kind of video game stuff, all that kind of jazz, video essays, I'll make sure to go check it out. Without further ado, let's talk about the NFC Championship game, which was, as you all know, San Francisco at the Philadelphia Eagles. And I decided to hold back on making any kind of series analysis video for this video, for that game, just because obviously I was a 49er fan. I took that game pretty harshly just because we were robbed of a genuinely really good game despite the injuries and to an extent the referees, but I'll get more into that later. Basically, long story short, Brock Purdy tore his UCL and left early in the game. Josh Johnson, the fourth-string quarterback, was diagnosed with a concussion. CMC was taking snaps at quarterback. Purdy came back, but he really could not do anything, and it was really too late. And then, so now that we know he tore his UCL, it just shows that the fact he really came in and toughed that game out, despite the fact they were down big at certain points of the game, and then, of course, having to throw the ball and with having a literally torn elbow is absolutely greedy of him to do. And if I have no idea if they knew that at the time, but if they did, I really hope they didn't, just because why are we risking on Brock Purdy's health like that? But anyways, also, when I kind of mean the referees, I kind of just mean questionable things that maybe should have been called, should not have been called. And one of them was early in the first half, there was a Devontae Smith catch where it was not a catch after it was determined not to be a catch, but just because of how fast the Eagles were moving. And then I'm pretty sure that Philly didn't show the replay because they knew that it was probably not a real completion. He was able to get a deep pass. Then Miles Sanders ran an easy touchdown. Then later in the game, of course, my bad, there was a horrible roughing the punter call on Jordan Mason, where he was, I forgot which Eagles special teams player, but he was literally just pushed straight into him, and he got called for the penalty. Not really sure how that works, just especially because he did not have momentum on his own volition to go into it on the punter, but that killed the defense's momentum to keep them off the field. And then two things can be true at once, and one thing was that the 49ers had dumb holding and late penalties. There was one play where Talanoa Hufanga hit Jalen Hurts when he was sliding out of bounds. Obviously, you can't do that to any quarterback, especially in this league. That's a no-no, and I get why he was flagged for that, but it's just, they called a lot of things on us. Obviously, this is how they were refereeing the game, but Lane Johnson had a lot of uncalled false starts. Devontae Smith had like a crazy hold on a Miles Sanders touchdown. And it's just, if you call everything on us and they don't call anything on them, it just kind of hurts to see that we're losing both our quarterbacks. We're not getting anything to go our way either. And then of course, the fact that our players just start not carrying, because if they're going to call penalties, it's going to let them go to their head, and they're going to create more penalties. And then, of course, the Eagles won 31-7. And I'm going to save this for probably a later video so I can talk more about free agents, a lot more stuff on the San Francisco side of things. But from what I can tell, a lot of the like Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, a lot of the people are pretty upset about what happened. Obviously, they're very upset what happened, just because no one in that building and none of the fan base really feels that we were beat by the Eagles. And to a lot of the Eagles fans I have talked to, none of them really feel that this was like a real kind of gritted out tough win that they had to get. It was a lot of things went their way, and that's just kind of how life goes sometimes. It's kind of how football goes. It sucks that I feel if we didn't have, obviously, I feel that if we didn't have the injuries that we suffered, we probably could have won. Obviously, who knows? But if we lost while we had Brock Purdy out there fully healthy, our defense was fully healthy, and we still lost, obviously, what more can you do? They're a really good team, but when you lose by losing both your quarterbacks, by having just refs just throw out flags for anything that can be called, and not calling anything for them, it feels a certain type of way where obviously we did make mistakes, but the fact that it felt like every call was going against us while they had their own mistakes and they kind of swept those under the rug. Obviously they're in Philly, so I'm pretty sure the refs want to go home alive. They're not gonna do ticky-tack fouls on the Eagles if they want to survive that stadium. I understand that, but still, it just felt like we didn't really get to see a full game just because everyone got hurt on San Francisco side, and then the Eagles were just able to cruise. Even they only had like 3 yards per play. Like, the defense showed up, and it just sucks that obviously that didn't go the way we wanted it to, but what more can we really do about that? We always have next season, I guess. It's just we have a lot of free agents, we have a lot of stuff coming up, and then it sucks to see that we were injured just at the absolute worst time. We lost everybody, if it felt like. And I kind of get on a lot of the fellow 49ers fans for being a little bit doomers, just kind of being so negative, but when stuff like that happens, I understand why. And especially if you're on the 49er Discord server, it just really felt like everything for the 49ers was falling apart, and as it's kind of how it went for them. And then the Eagles, obviously, when your other the team you're playing against, I should say, when they lose both quarterbacks and then their guys are getting hurt by, like, Nick Bosa got hurt because like a player fell on him on the sidelines. Fred Warner looked hurt. Obviously, they did what it had to do. Of course, I'm not going to criticize them for beating us when we were down all our guys. It just sucks that it happened that way instead of happening at full strength. But they're able to win. They won the NFC Championship game, obviously, and then they're going to go to Super Bowl 57, where they'll be playing the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm going to talk about that game right now as well. For me, there was some, obviously, as I mentioned before, there was some kind of ticky-tack fouls I felt personally were against the Niners, but at the end of the day, we still had our bad penalties, late hits, stuff like that. We lost both our quarterbacks. I understand that, but for the Cincinnati at Kansas City game, it genuinely felt like the NFL had who they wanted to win the game. And just because normally I don't buy into these narratives, but people have been calling the NFL rigged for a while, obviously, since basically forever, but really recently we had the 2018 season where there was the no call on the Saints, for example. That was kind of a really questionable call. There was the Nick Bosa being held, stuff like that in the Super Bowl in 2019. But then this game happened, and it literally just feels like the refs, the NFL wanted the Chiefs to win, and then I just listed off some of like the really egregious fouls I was able to find. Obviously, some people say they found more fouls when I looked into it. They weren't really that bad, but for me, I found there was the no intentional grounding call on Mahomes when it was called on Burrow when like Joe Mixon was like only a couple yards from the ball. So Mahomes got away with that one. No holding calls on the final drive when there was like 3 of them at once. The Chiefs got that second, third down, which was a big uproar at the time, especially if you're on Twitter. And then it was called late into the next play, which made no sense. So that's 3 really questionable plays that the Bengals, like, especially that call on the intentional grounding, that went against Joe Burrow, but when Mahomes does it, nothing happens. I don't know what the logic was behind that. And then the no holding called in the last drive sucked. And then the Chiefs' second, third down, I kind of understand just because it was really loud in that stadium, so the refs kind of no one can hear the whistle, but still, it just felt like it took forever for them to call that when they're already like almost midway through the next play. And I understand why Zach Taylor was super pissed about that, just because if your defense makes a stop against a crazy great Kansas City offense of Mahomes and all those Kelsey and all those guys, and then the ref seemingly just randomly give them another third down, I would be really upset too. Then the game functionally ended. Where at the end of the fourth quarter, Asai, who was one of the Bengals linebackers, he hit Mahomes out of bounds, which that was a reasonable penalty. I'm not going to say that was like ref ball or anything like that. That did happen. He hit Mahomes out of bounds. But the only thing about that one would just be that he got hit out of bounds. Obviously, Mahomes got hit out of bounds while that was the same play where I mentioned before. There was like three different O linemen from the Chiefs just holding, and then obviously if they would have called that those penalties, that would have offset his penalty. Who knows if they actually win the game off that? But when you see stuff like that and they only call it for the against the Bengals, that really just kind of sucks. Unfortunately, that's just how the game went. One thing against the Bengals, though, that I'm surprised not more people are talking about would be that Joe Burrow really did not play too good. He had 2 interceptions, I believe only 1 touchdown, and obviously it didn't help that Tyler Boyd got hurt early. But still, you would think in the AFC Championship game with a lot of stuff on the line, Joe Burrow would have played a little bit better on Sunday, but that didn't really end up happening, unfortunately, for the Bengals. And then I mentioned this on the Ravens recap, and I mentioned it a couple of times throughout the season, but it feels the Bengals offense just has I don't know what happens, but it just stalls out in the worst critical drives. And then, of course, that has to lead their defense to stopping whoever was on the field. And it worked last week because the Bills were not playing good at all. It worked against the Ravens, who are very one-dimensional, but leaving their defense out, especially for the majority of the second half, it felt like, against Mahomes and the Chiefs, that's not a good idea at all. And then another aspect of why Joe Burrow had those 2 bad picks, because obviously he had one where he just threw into double coverage that didn't really work out for him, obviously. Then the offensive line was just god awful. They allowed 5 sacks, and they allowed so much pressure all game. And then it kind of reminded me of the Super Bowl last year, where the Rams were just destroying the Bengals O-line. Like, they had their way from the whole game. And then if Burrow had more time, obviously he'd win almost every game, just because having more time for any quarterback is a big difference. But it literally just felt like this O-line could not do anything. Chris Jones, Frank Clark, all those guys on the Chiefs had their absolute way with them. But then one more thing about this game before I move on to the Super Bowl kind of predictions and all that stuff. There was a surprise hero in the game. That would be Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who was a longtime Packer. He started his career with them. He had a pretty good season in 2020, especially with Aaron Rodgers, but he was a surprise hero. I didn't expect him to have a game like this, but he had 6 receptions for 116 yards and 1 touchdown, and he was just, on the last drive, oh my god, he was super clutch. It was pretty crazy to see, because I always thought of him as kind of like just like a speedster who has some drop problems, good, but ever since he went to Kansas City with Reed and Mahomes, he's been a real kind of a quiet player. Obviously, he's not as good as Tyreek Hill was, for example, but he's a really serviceable, solid wide receiver. So that's one thing I wanted to mention as well. No one's been talking about that, but MVS had a really good game, and I want to give him a shout out for having that good game. Let's talk about Super Bowl 57, which would be obviously the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And then, as of right now, the Eagles open up as 1.5 point favorites against the Chiefs. And I'm pretty surprised it's that low, just because I'll talk more about this later, but the Chiefs are pretty banged up and the Eagles are relatively healthy, of course. My Super Bowl 57 prediction would be the Eagles do win over the Kansas City Chiefs. And then, so let's kind of talk about why I think that's going to go. It's mainly because of health. That's kind of like the main difference. But first, the Philadelphia offensive line is not going to allow the amount of sacks and pressures the Bengals line did. Obviously, I know Lane Johnson has the adductor injury, but he played through it, and he said he's feeling less pain, so I'd imagine he's going to be feeling pretty good. And that's exactly how the Chiefs won against the Bengals, because how much pressure they're getting, how much sacks they're getting. And that Philadelphia line is rock solid. They have Jordan Mailata. We know we have Jason Kelsey. They also have, as I mentioned before, Lane Johnson. And those are just like some of the names I can name off the top of my head. I'm not even an Eagles fan. They have a really good offensive line, and they're not going to allow the same. I'd imagine Frank Clark or Chris Jones gets a couple hits maybe, but not the same way it's going to be always against the Bengals. So that's one thing. And then, so another thing that I mentioned before, but the Chiefs are banged up. L'Jarius Sneed, their cornerback one, is still in concussion protocol. Last time I checked, and who knows with that? Wouldn't be surprised if we can't play it in the Super Bowl. Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman, Kadarius Toney, and Willie Gay, some of their most important receivers and linebackers. They're all banged up and limited participants, or they're not practiced at all. So they're, even if they have those guys ready to go, they're not going to be 100%. And the Eagles have a really tough secondary. They have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, James Bradbury, Darius Slay. They have real dogs in that secondary. So if that's not going to help the Chiefs at all. Obviously, Mahomes is a magician, but against the Philadelphia D-line, Hassan Reddick, they even have Old and Dominican Sue, Josh Sweat, Robert Quinn. They have a lot of guys on that D-line as well. So Mahomes going to have to be running for his life, probably I would imagine a couple times as well. And especially now that he still has that ankle injury, which kind of flared up a little bit last game, but not too much. But if he has to run, obviously he still can, but it's going to hurt him a lot. And I would imagine the D-line getting some constant pressure as well. So that's my main thing. The Eagles seem to be pretty fully loaded, pretty healthy. Jalen Hurts is recovering from a shoulder injury as well. And my main thing is I wish I had a little bit more to say about the Super Bowl preview. It's the biggest game of the year, especially most people are going to be tuning into this game who don't even watch football that often. But the main thing would just be, especially in the championship round, especially the Chiefs, but also to an extent the Eagles, they had either the refs giving them generous calls, or they kind of just ended up playing against a really banged up team. Chiefs played against that banged up offensive line from Cincinnati. The Eagles had the San Francisco quarterback room get demolished in one game, so it's really hard to gauge on how good are they actually, because they both didn't play like a 100% team. More so the Eagles on this one, but then the Chiefs, we know that they had some calls kind of for them as well. If this was the Eagles demolished a fully healthy 49er team, I would probably say they demolished the Chiefs, but because of the fact that there's still a lot of, mainly for the Chiefs, of how Mahomes is going to be coming off injury. Travis Kelce was supposed to have like that back injury. It didn't look too bad on the game, but who really knows with that? A lot of their guys are banged up, a little bit more so with the Chiefs. Who really knows with that? But I'm pretty sure because the Eagles are at least a lot more healthy than the Chiefs, that's kind of my logic on why they'd beat the Kansas City Chiefs. That's why I'm rolling with the Philadelphia Eagles to win the Super Bowl. So I have a lot of NBA news to talk about, so buckle up. We have Raptors, All-Star Snubs. We have the Kyrie Irving stuff. But I'm going to talk about the Memphis Grizzlies first. Right now, a lot of people kind of have them on their hate radar, especially if you're an NBA fan. Last night against the Cleveland Cavaliers, Dylan Brooks got into an altercation of Donovan Mitchell and hit him in the groin. That led to a fight, and Donovan Mitchell threw him to the ground, and then there was a bunch of drama of that. But the reason why I want to talk about the Grizzlies is because people probably click on that, but mainly because they really are becoming the new villains of the NBA pretty fast. Because my main thing is, they didn't learn from the Phoenix Suns and their fake grit attitude. They pretend to be super hard, super tough, and all that stuff, but after that 11-game win streak ended, they're 1-7 since they got into that fight with Shannon Sharp, and they're 7-8 ever since John Morant said that he was not worrying about the West. He thought the West would be easy. And then ever since that happened, they've been on the downhill, just because every team it played super hard against them, and it seems like no team are really taking any crap from them anymore. And then the reason why I also want to talk about this is just because I'm glad to see it, just because if you watched a lot of basketball recently, we know for a fact John Morant does a lot of like the gritty dances. They dance after every win. It can be like the most normal regular season win. They'll do a dancing, a full celebration. And especially when you see that over and over on the House of Highlights, Bleacher Report, it kind of weighs on you a little bit. And then it kind of overshadows the monster season Jaren Jackson Jr. or JJJ is having, because he basically has almost five blocks and 1 steal a game. He's been a monster defensively. Just he hasn't been healthy because he's very injury prone. He was out last night with a thigh injury. He has a lot of lower leg injuries, unfortunately, upper leg injuries as well. So even Jaren Jackson Jr. is not safe from controversy. There was like a really weird kind of like it came from Reddit, of course, and it was like a fake scorekeeper scandal. And I don't know how this happened, and it seems so just surreal to kind of bring up. But basically, someone has kind of made up bullcrap stats about the Memphis scorekeeper making bullcrap stats. So the whole rumor and the whole like narrative was that at home, Jaren Jackson Jr. was like super good. He didn't have the same production on the road, and then it turns out that it was just completely false because Memphis doesn't have a scorekeeper. The scorekeeper at any game is always going to be an NBA one. It's not like how the home teams have their home announcers, all that stuff. The scorekeeper is always going to be an NBA like official. It's not going to be like a Memphis guy at a Memphis game. So that kind of thing got wholeheartedly debunked, and it was just kind of weird to see. Like, so it was a lot of effort put into that post. It was like a lot of fake stats, a lot of kind of circumstantial evidence that got put to kind of throw a lot of shade at JJJ, who right now is, I believe, at least top 2, top 1 in the defensive player of the year race right now. So we have to see where he goes with that. The only reason why he probably wouldn't win it with these stats would literally just be because you have to play at around 60% of your games, or 50 games out of 82. And if you don't, you can't qualify for like MVP, defensive player of the year, all that kind of stuff. So if he stays healthy, he's probably a shoo-in to win that, especially if like other guys like 80s hurt. Rudy Gobert kind of took a while to get his footing in Minnesota. So also Giannis would be there, but I'm pretty sure they don't want to give it to Giannis every year. So that happens a lot, especially in NBA voter fatigue. So I would imagine JJJ has the best shot to win it if he can stay healthy. But so right now, the NBA trade deadline is on the 9th, which would be Thursday from here. And right now, there's still a bunch of rumors on what's going to happen. So I'm going to talk about this team first, which would be the Toronto Raptors. Right now, the Raptors, until the Kyrie Irving stuff happened, and I wrote the majority of the script not knowing that would happen. But basically, the one team that kind of determines a lot of how the market's going to go for the trade deadline is going to be the Raptors, because I was watching a Funky Diabetic. He made up some pretty good points about, was it Funky Diabetic, or it could have been Sporting Logically, one of the two NBA YouTubers. But who really knows if the Raptors are actually gonna hit a rebuild? Just because they can easily just say that we're just gonna hold on to our guys, wait until next season, the off season, maybe unload some of the guys, of course, and then kind of go from there, rather than kind of being a little bit more brash about it. I'm just bringing that up just because it's pretty obvious that they're having a really disappointing season. They're out of the play-in tournament, which is basically the NBA's participation trophy that hands off to the top 10 teams instead of the top 8 now. So you have to almost try to not make the play-in now, and they're out of the play-in by 2 games. And the tanking Orlando Magic, who everyone kind of knows, they're a very young team. They're only 3.5 games ahead of them. So if the Raptors did say we're unloading Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, if they just say that, okay, we're getting rid of them, we're gonna basically hit the rebuild mode, and they probably can really start tanking down with those other teams as well to get a really high draft pick. And we all know how good this draft class is. I've talked about that before. So that's gonna be the main thing. Pascal, that's like the big 3 they might trade away. Siakam, VanVleet, OG Anunoby, and so the main player from those that I guess the majority of the NBA would want would be OG Anunoby. And right now, the kind of going rate would be 3 first-round picks and possibly a young player. And I'm not gonna lie, I was on board that's way too much for the OG train, just because I didn't really know too much about his value, especially to NBA GMs. But when I kind of looked into it a little bit more, I would fully understand why a team, especially who's one piece away or trying to contend, would trade him for 3 first-round picks, because he's only 25 years old, but he hits 45% of his corner threes. He's an elite defender. His offensive game is always growing, and he can switch to nearly any player on the court, which in this modern league, you need switchable guys who can defend every position rather than only their own position. So having that is really big. And any one piece away kind of team, like a Mavericks or maybe Pelicans, for example, is another team I'm kind of hearing as well, would kill to have an elite 3-and-D player. 3-and-D players are so valuable, especially if they're a wing in this league, and OG being a really good one who can still develop is obviously going to be leading to the Raptors wanting to trade him for a lot of compensation that I understand teams would give up a lot for. And then he's basically, OG Anunoby's kind of as good as I can get without really being considered like a full-on like a superstar, like a Donovan Mitchell, Tatum, Luka, obviously, those kind of guys. And then Van Fleet has been struggling, but I'm pretty sure a team like the Clippers have been really linked to him. I'm pretty sure they want him, so he's a veteran point guard that can help them win now. Pascal Siakam, he's a star. He's really underrated though. He averaged 25 points per game, and no one talks about that. He can have really good games. You won't really see any highlights, but he's a really good player still. And he can be flipped to another team that believes they're a star away from contending. So we'll have to see on who actually buys any of the Toronto Raptors players, who trades for them, of course. We'll have to see about that. We'll have to see if they even decide to get rid of all three of them, maybe one, two of them as well. Who really knows what's going on with the Raptors, but they really determine what's kind of going on with the trade deadline, or at least they did majority-wise until Kyrie Irving decided to request a trade. And then this morning, per Shams and Woj, the two of the premier NBA newsbreakers, the Nets and Kyrie. So the reason why he's requesting a trade is because the Nets and Kyrie's camp could not agree on a long-term extension and the amount of years, guarantee, money, so on and so forth. And now he wants a trade. And what's really funny is I was planning on making a video. The Nets are so weird because I remember at the beginning of the NBA season, I wanted to make a video kind of making fun of how KD wanted to trade. There was all this stuff with Kyrie and his promotion of whatever was he did promote on Amazon, which people did not like. There was a lot of stuff about them, so I was about to make like a video, probably like the Nets are like a clown show or whatever. And then as soon as I was about to start making that video, they go on like a massive run. They win like 10 games in a row. Then they get the second best record in the entire NBA, and it's like, okay, so obviously one thing you have to especially for non-NBA fans, if I have to explain this to you, Kyrie Irving with no distractions is an all-star starter. Like, he is super good. He's a top 10 player when the media are not questioning him about whatever views about if he's not getting pulled up. When that stuff's not in the question, people kind of forget Kyrie Irving is a really, really good player, and people are just like, oh, well, he said this, like, whatever. Like, I'm not counting that. I'm just talking more about the basketball player. I'm talking about mainly how good he is. He's a really, really good player when there's no distractions. When there's distractions, when he doesn't take the vaccine, whatever, that's when you kind of really start to see that he kind of disappears a lot. And then especially last season where he was injury prone, and of course he's injury prone as well, but when he's on his game, when there's no kind of media storyline around it, and when he's healthy, he's a really good player. Same thing with KD. Obviously KD is not, so then you kind of charged with as much the political stuff, but he's still kind of known as a drama queen. He still has his moments as well. But when those two are fully healthy and they're locked in, that's a very deadly team, and we saw that. And then, of course, I'm like, okay, the Nets are really good. They're the hottest team in basketball. I want to make the Nets turn it around. They went from KD wanting to trade to when before even that James Harden got his way out. I was planning on doing, maybe we gotta watch out for the Nets. They're a really good team. And then KD hurts his MCL, and it's like, okay, and then they really fell off since then. They went, I think, 3-10 at one point. They really had a steep fall from that. Of course, it's just a really bipolar team. They're very up and down. You can never, as soon as it's going good for them, they're going on a win streak, you can guarantee something like a trade request or a superstar drama, something happens, and then they fall back down. Then when you kind of forget about them, they come back up. That's been the story since Kyrie and KD have signed with them. So, and then that just kind of plays into where we're at right now. Kyrie Irving wants out, and then have no idea if he's going to be playing the next couple games. The Nets did say that he's going to be playing. Obviously, he can just sit out because the Stars have a lot of power in the NBA, so who knows with that. But obviously, there's a couple teams that are linked with him. We have the Lakers, like by far the most linked team of him. We also have the Mavericks. We have I hear a little bit about Wizards for some reason. Hear a little bit about the Heat as well. Even something like the Pals. But I don't really buy into the Wizards stuff because they're a really weird team. They don't make aggressive moves like that, so I don't think they would be in the market for him. And then I would think that he could actually be kind of like a dark horse team because they need a real point guard. Kyle Lowry he's unfortunately his age has really caught up to him, and he's not been playing good. And then having Kyrie, Jimmy Butler, that would help their offense out so much more with Tyler Hero as well. But also the Clippers, but I think they're more in line with Van Fleet, because I'm pretty sure they don't want the headache, the drama, all that stuff Kyrie brings with them. I mean, hearing some stuff with the Mavericks, because they really do want to get Luka a real number 2 superstar. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do that either. But they're also, every team, once again, they have to make the risk of, do you want Kyrie, of all the drama, all the media attention, do you want all that stuff? But you also get a superstar basketball player. That's kind of like the main thing. And then the Lakers are the team most associated with them, just because they can, basically the way that a Laker trade would go down would just be, if they trade for Kyrie, it would probably have to be Russell Westbrook, their one or both of their first round picks, and then the Nets would obviously send Kyrie Irving. They didn't have to send probably some salary fillers, such as Joe Harris and Steph Curry, because in the NBA, GM generally like to keep their salaries, especially in trades, relatively the same. Obviously, a couple million either way won't hurt you, but you don't want to trade for $10 million more that Westbrook's contract brings over Kyrie's. So they would have to give up another player as well. But for both of the unprotected Lakers first round picks, that can be something you might want to look out for. And then, so another main roadblock would just be that Joe Tsai and Sean Marks have put their foot down with the KD trade request. He didn't end up going anywhere. He obviously played. He played really good for them when he was healthy. So this could be another thing where Kyrie and his camp are just trying to get some more money, some more guaranteed money, maybe more years on his contract. Who really knows what's going on with Kyrie? Just because Kyrie is just it's just so hard to gauge Kyrie Irving, just because I wouldn't be this whole thing, I can be talking about this, and then tomorrow morning he'd be saying he loves Brooklyn, he loves staying there, he wants to be part of them for a couple more years. That can easily happen, and then all this discussion was for nothing, really. Kyrie Irving is one of those players, he can change his mind and next day, and then just kind of go on about our lives as normal. But at the same time, if he's really set on this, here's the main thing about if he's really set on this, I believe people are kind of split on whether they should trade him. But if you're Brooklyn and you can get 2 first round picks, future first round picks unprotected, you do that, especially because Kyrie Irving is not going to probably re-sign back anyways. So trading Kyrie Irving and basically a rental Kyrie Irving and then getting some picks back, that's really good. Helps your assets. And then if you want to trade for another star that won't bail on you, you can always just trade those picks, a couple other picks for another superstar. You can flip maybe another player as well, throw another like a Ben Simmons or whoever in that trade as well. Get another player to help KD out. You can always just flip those assets. I wouldn't be surprised if they do that either. I'm just armchair GMing for the NBA at this point, but it's really interesting to see how a lot of teams kind of want to go about this. And then so the main thing would just be, everyone's talking about this for the Lakers, so I'm gonna kind of go with that. So let's just say the Lakers want to get Kyrie Irving. They're gonna trade Russell Westbrook, one or both of their picks, for Kyrie Irving and probably some salary fillers players. So the main thing, if you're Lakers GM, if you're Rob Pelinka, if you're a fan, or if you're any of the guys in the front office, Genie Bus, whoever, here's the main thing about trading for Kyrie Irving, in my opinion, and it would just have to be, if you trade for Kyrie Irving, you have to know if he's going to stay or not. If you trade for Kyrie Irving the rest of his contract this year and then he's not going to stay, you should just hold on to Russ, let that contract expire, use that salary cap, and then sign another player in free agency next year. Just because if you trade away Russ, if you trade away 2 of your first round picks, and you only get Kyrie Irving for like half a year, maybe you win a playoff series, maybe not, and then it's just like, okay, you traded away. You're basically, the Lakers only have 2 first round picks left because of stepping rule. So trading away those picks wouldn't make sense unless they know that they can get Kyrie Irving here, and then they can sign to like a 4-year contract extension for whatever the money he wants. If the Bus family is willing to sign up for that money, they obviously should. If they know they can get Kyrie Irving to commit for like 3-4 years when they bring him over here, you absolutely do it. You don't, no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But this kind of blows the whole top off the NBA trade deadline, just because a lot of people were kind of going in. Even Sham said this. He thought even the insiders, the GMs, they were expecting a really boring trade deadline, just because, as I mentioned before, we kind of had like that whole Rudy Gobert pick inflation that happened. A lot of teams want those kind of style of deals. Donovan Mitchell size trade packages. A lot of teams are, if they're going to trade away the player, they want everything in the farm for the, that player now. And then, of course, teams are not wanting to trade players. They want to hold on a little bit. Some teams like the Jazz, they probably thought they're going to just be absolute sucking right now. So they probably thought, but since they're pretty decent right now, they can make a playoff, get like a top 5 seed or whatever, because the West is so compact. They're thinking they can buy a player out instead, maybe trade for a player and then trading away a player. So a lot of things were kind of really uncertain, but because Kyrie Irving wants out and the Raptors look like they're heading towards a rebuild, you have a lot of players on the market right now because of that. And I kind of listed the ones I thought were most notable. We have Kyrie Irving, obviously, the Raptors kind of big three with OG, Van Fleet, Siakam. Then we have Nikola Vucevic from the Bulls. I would imagine the Bulls want to get rid of him because he's kind of been a disappointment for them. Same thing with Zach LaVine. He's been kind of hurt. He's been kind of really inconsistent. John Collins has been on the trade market for like ever now, and the Atlanta Hawks never use him as like a full-on like number 2 option. They, especially when they have 2 ball-dominant guards with Murray and Young there. I would imagine they flip Collins maybe to like the Nets or wherever. I'll talk maybe more about that in a bit. Jakob Poeltl from the Spurs. Obviously, he's a big man that can shoot. Everyone wants a big man that can shoot now. Russell Westbrook, he's kind of on the market mainly as a, if people are trading for him, they're trading for his salary, just because once it expires, they have $47 million they can play around with in free agency, see what we can do with that. And then D'Angelo Russell, also another player who seems to be on the trade market. Obviously, there are other guys such as Buddy Hield, Miles Turner, and I'm missing another couple players as well. I heard Bradley Beal's also kind of in there. I'm not really too sure about that, but Barton kind of also thrown in there. But those players seem to be a little bit more unattainable because they signed extensions recently. So really knows with that. But a lot of these other guys aren't expiring deals, or their deals are going to be maybe from 1 more year. So we'll have to see about that. Also, Bogdanovic from the Pistons and another kind of player that seems to be along a lot of rumors. So we have a lot of guys that can be really traded and can contribute to a new team. Kyrie Irving, he's really good at shooting the 3. He has the best handles in basketball. He's a magician. He's really good. Obviously, OG is a 2-way player, 3-and-D guy. Van Fleet, if he's back, he can be a really good scorer. Siakam's a really good scorer even right now. Just a really versatile player. Vucevic, if he can get back to form, he's a big man that can space the floor. He's not the best defense. He never had the best defense, but spacing the floor is so big now. Zach LaVine is a player that can has a pretty good 3-ball, who has a lot of bounce, especially back then before a lot of the injuries kind of took place. John Collins can be a really versatile offensive player when he can space the floor, but he's a lot more than that. But the Hawks don't really use him for that, so that can be another thing. Jakob Poeltl, same thing. He's another guy who can space the floor as a big man. Russell Westbrook has that contract, which once it expires, you get a lot of money saved up from it. D'Angelo Russell is a really steady point guard when he's on his game, but obviously it's been no secret that in the last, especially since last year, he's been really consistent in Minnesota. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Timberwolves just basically trade him away and give the keys to the offense to him instead. That's what I expect to happen. So we have a lot of guys now that before most of these players I wouldn't really have thought of were on the trade market, but because the Raptors are not doing so hot right now, they're probably gonna be selling a lot of players. Kyrie Irving requested a trade, so that's gonna have to be acknowledged or dealt with soon. Collins, that's a player that's been on the market forever, so I kind of don't take the trade rumors as seriously, because he's been in trade rumors since for like 2 years now. So when a player like that, like a Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, they've also been on the winners. Indiana gonna get rid of those, and then it seems like every trade deadline comes, they don't really do anything with them. They've been on their roster for a while now, so of course we'll really have to see about that right now. And then, so I just want to also, before I let you guys go, just want to talk about the All-Star Snubs really fast as well, just because obviously there's a bunch of stuff that happened with the trade deadline stuff, but the All-Star rosters got officially released, And a lot of people are pretty mad about that. Obviously, if you're on Twitter, people are going to be mad at everything, but there's some things are a little bit questionable. But the main snub for me would just be James Harden not making the team over like Drew Holiday. And James Harden, when the amount of games he's played, he leads the leagues in the most assists per game, like 10 or 11 assists per game. And he did not make the All-Star team. Drew Holiday did. Obviously, Drew Holiday has been playing pretty good for the Bucks, especially with no Giannis and Chris Middleton, but still kind of surprising. But my main thing is I've been advocating for Jalen Brunson for a while. He's been averaging over 20 points per game. He didn't make the team. Jaron Fox, who's averaging almost 25 a game, did not make the team, especially for the West side. That was crazy. Siakam didn't make the team. He's been criminally underrated for a while. Anthony Davis, I can understand because he's been hurt a bit. He didn't make the team. Butler didn't make the team. He's been inconsistent. The Heat have been a little bit better, but still, and didn't make the team. And he's a really good scorer, so I was surprised about that. And my main thing would just be, you do have to acknowledge the All-Star team is really crowded this year. There's a lot of great. The NBA has so much talent right now. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to expand soon because of how much talent they can spread out through teams. But that's a topic for another day. But my main thing is, how does Jaren Jackson Jr. make the All-Star team over AD when they have like almost this very similar amount of minutes played? But Jaren Jackson Jr. obviously has been a little bit better statistically, especially on the defense side of the ball. But AD averages almost 26 points per game, while JJJ, last time I checked, averages around 12-14 points a game. So and they both miss a bunch of time. So if you had to kind of pick it, why would you pick AD over JJJ unless it was just because JJJ, I think, has played a little bit more? So that didn't really make sense to me, but who really knows with that? Because I know it's part of it is other players, coaches, media, and the fan vote. So who really knows what's going on with the All-Star team right now? Just because there's a bunch of spots that unfortunately, and there's a bunch of players who cannot make all the spots. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of spots that kind of just had to be taken, like a Giannis, Jokic, LeBron, like no matter what, Luka as well. Those spots are just instantly taken up. So for like those kind of really good / MVP candidates, there's so limited spots now. There's so many great players in the NBA. Unfortunately, when guys like Ant, Siakam, Butler don't make it, even though probably most other years they make it. So I think that shows how much parity there is in the league. So that's a good thing. Obviously, the snubs are not a good thing, but it's really fun to see how in the NBA there's so much talent. A lot of teams have a lot of great players, even if not performing the best right now. But a lot of teams are still really competitive. They've been I saw a stat recently that shows a lot of teams have been really good at home just because everyone defends home like crazy. So there's a reason why there's so many teams, especially in the Western Conference, that are so close to each other. But that's all I kind of have for you guys today. If you like this video and you want more, make sure to like, leave a comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. Make sure to check my other channel as well. Thank you guys for staying this far long in the video. So have a nice one. I'll talk to you guys later.